Time to talk golf on Prime Sports Network, and we have a post PGA Championship edition, as well as a preview of this week's Charles Schwab from Colonial Country Club. Jeff Shain is back with us once again. No Jan Stephenson or Jared Smola. As you know from last week, Jared is on vacation. He'll be back next week, and he'll be gloating about his pick of Justin Thomas winning the PGA Championship. No such gloating for Jan Stephenson, but she'll be back anyway as well. So, Jeff, good to talk to you. Crazy PGA Championship Sunday yesterday.
You always give your regular guests the week after a major off?
Yeah, geez, yeah. Oh, you wish you had that kind of luxury, right? That's not how it was for me.
No, I'm like you. I'm telling people that I'm kind of like Troy Polamalu in those shampoo commercials, never not working. So
no doubt about that. Especially,
where were we?
Well, the PGA Championship was a very tough one to watch, and it was not surprising. Based on, they put up the graphics about the players that were on top of the leaderboard, and not only it wasn't majors, it was PGA wins. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Oh, there's this guy, Justin Thomas, with 20 or whatever, or Rory McIlroy with 14, whatever it was. 0, 0, 0. And you just had a feeling with this tough golf course on a Sunday that was going to cause problems for all the players with the zeros. And it certainly did for Mito. Tough. It's going to historically go down. It's just one of those collapses. It wasn't a monumental collapse, but it was like a slow burn for the last couple of hours that you just saw coming.
He was doing his best to hang on. He made some decent par saves, won at 10, took a bogey at 14, had a really strong par save after missing the green on that drivable par 4 at number 17. But sometimes you play with fire long enough and it's going to burn you. And just the swing, you didn't even need to see the tracker, or you didn't need to see the ball flight. It was a quick, ugly, inelegant, off balance, choose your adjective swing, and you just kind of knew this is going to be in trouble wherever it lands. If it had landed in the fairway, I would have been stunned with the way that swing looked. And unfortunately, not only did it flare off to the right, but it wound up in the worst possible place, in the water. And like I say, you play with fire long enough and eventually you're going to get burned. And there was just no possible way for him to come back from that. The unfortunate thing is he couldn't even get in the playoff. He went from being one shot ahead to being done and out.
Yeah. And there were some unlucky situations as well, including 17. I mean, to come that close to taking a 2-stroke lead, I'm not so sure we see the tee shot on 18. I think he's got the 2-stroke lead. Like, all of a sudden, there's more pressure off of him, and I think it's a completely different situation. But that's just the way the ball rolls, or the ball doesn't roll. I thought CBS got caught, and I understand what they were trying to do, but I just thought it was equally painful to have Joaquin Niemann talking like if Mito had like a 10-stroke lead, like if, he's winning, and let's just have Joaquin there to bring him on home, and Joaquin standing there in the 18, waiting to congratulate him for a big major. It was hard to watch. And then it was like, all right, well, we screwed that up. Let's zero in on Justin's dad. Let's go with that. Let's see if we can. It just didn't work out. That was bad. It made you feel that much more sorry for the whole.
All I can say is that it helped me out because I was able to use a couple of those Joaquin Neiman quotes in the column that I wrote yesterday.
That's
So
good.
I'm not going to argue that
That's
at
good.
all. And let's face it, if he had won, if Mito had pulled off one of the, you can't call it one of the all-time upsets because I still look at Sean McKeel and Rich Beam and that
Without a
whole
doubt,
stretch in the
yes.
2000s.
Sure.
But it would have been a very strong, out of the blue victory, and it would have been huge for Latin American golf. They have had two major champions through this entire time: Roberto De Vincenzo at the 1967 British Open, and then Angel Cabrera twice, once at the U.S. Open, once at the Masters. And Angel Cabrera is watching golf from whatever prison cell he's in Argentina right now after running afoul of law enforcement with a domestic dispute. And so it would have been just a really a big pick-me-up for South American, Latin American golf. They are starting to populate the tours a lot more often now, not only with Joaquin Neiman, but you see Sebastian Munoz, you see Abraham Answer coming from
Yeah,
Mexico.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and so to see that population spring up, it would have been really great to have a major champion from Latin America. And Mito has a ton of talent. He kind of, not to mix metaphors necessarily, but he went the Ash Barty route. He retired from golf as a teenager and then decided after a couple of years when a friend invited him out, you know what, this isn't so bad, I'll go back. And he won 3 times on the Korn Ferry Tour last year, earned that automatic promotion to the PGA Tour. He's got a ton of talent. We'll just see how this scar tissue comes out from the one shot
Yeah.
at the 18th hole.
I think he'll be fine. And like you said, that's because he's a talented player. Matter of fact, we had been talking about him. I brought him up a handful of times in the last couple of months. I asked Jan if she had give me a player this year that will break his PGA Tour maiden. And my pick was Mito.
Okay.
And we talked last week with Jared and talked about how I think it was 2 weeks ago when I picked Mito as one of my picks in the Byron Nelson, and talked about how I feel that, I mean, if I had to pick one player on the PGA Tour that was, not a top 50 ranked player right now today that I thought had star potential and I was going to buy his stock, I said it's Mito. So none of this surprised me. None of this surprised anyone on this show. So yeah, totally not Sean McKeel or any of that stuff. This is a completely different type of player who almost stole, in a way, a major. Because when you're that young and you don't have any wins on the PGA Tour, that's and you're gonna wind up with a really good, as long as, look, I think he's gonna have a really good, I still feel he's obviously now more than ever gonna have a really good PGA Tour career. This is just gonna be one of those situations where, hey, you know what? I almost stole one. I'll get one later on, maybe when I deserve it. But this is maybe also going to be a learning experience that we'll see how, like you said, though, will it affect him? I think it's only going to be a question of, will it affect him in the short run or not? And I think we'll find out next week. And I'm already picking him this week as one of my top 5 picks. I don't think it's going to affect them.
Well, and the one thing that you can't duplicate, you can't duplicate this on the range. You can't even duplicate it in a Korn Ferry event or a semi, huge PGA Tour event, is Sunday at a major championship. And how do you handle it? Some people have that personality where they can either seize the moment aggressively or let all of that pressure roll off their back. But most of the time, I would have loved to have asked Jan this question this week, is, how, in your very first major championship contention on Sunday, what did you feel? How did you deal with it? And even Mito admitted afterward that it it just went a little crazy. And you think you know what you're going to try to do, and yet you don't know what adrenaline is going to do. We'd seen in the broadcast his swing at times got quick on the back nine. He was missing right when he had the quick swing, but none of it was nearly as visually awful
as the last one. Yeah.
as the 18th.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was out of sync
Yeah.
on 18, and it looked like something maybe that I would have hit, maybe a little shorter. Maybe I wouldn't have gone in the creek with that.
Yeah.
But it looked like my swing and not a PGA Tour professional's.
Yeah, and see, that's why when I said Stoll, because if you look at even like a Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, any really top player, they don't win their first PGA Tour event a major. That doesn't happen. So,
Sean McKeel.
Yeah, I'm talking about the great players.
Okay.
So even the great players don't get their first. So because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying it shouldn't be, and I don't think it will be a one of those things where. So now, if it was a Sean McKeel type player, that's different, because oh no, I let my one chance potentially go away. But that's just I think this is
sometimes the golf gods don't let you have another one.
Well, again,
even if you're a relatively talented player. I mean, you take a look at Mike Donald at the 1990 U.S. Open. He was in contention in a lot of PGA Tour events and happened to it was his week at Medina until Hale Irwin sank that long putt on the 72nd hole to get into the playoff. And it just, I don't know what, it just, took the wind out of Mike Donald's sails. Len Matisse at the 2003 Masters.
Just look at the players now. Lee Westwood still hasn't won one.
Exactly.
So,
but Lee Westwood has had more than one opportunity.
Oh, yeah,
and I guess that's my point is sometimes the golf gods don't let you have another one for whatever reason. And I'm hoping Mito is not put into that category. Like I say, he's 27. He's a PGA Tour rookie, kind of took the longer route, went through Latino America, went through the Korn Ferry, but he's had the talent for years and years and years. It's just a matter of now you got to figure out how to do it on the biggest stage. And he'll learn from it.
And the other thing that we had talked about last week when we were going over our picks, the two potential American future stars that we both picked, Jared and I, who had never won a PGA Tour event, and yet we still picked them. Now, my guy I picked as an alternate. I didn't go all out like Jared did. But at least his player was maybe a little bit more, had a little bit more of a resume for it. So Jared goes with Zalatoris. I go with Cam Young. And they didn't get it done. And we know how close Zalatoris came, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the fact is, that is also not a fluke. These two young American players are got boatloads of talent, and they're the next wave coming. And I think that's just tremendous. And I think they're going to make it even that much more difficult on the PGA Tour to win on a week-to-week basis. Just the talent just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
It really does. And you look at Will Zalatoris, he's been on the tour for just a couple of years. He's got 2 runner-up finishes in a major, 1 in a playoff. I think he's got 4 top 10s in majors already. Cam Young is another rookie, and he's got 3 runner-up finishes in this season as a rookie on the PGA Tour. So he's got 0 wins, but he's coming darn close, and he finishes what, 4th, 5th this week?
4th, I believe.
4th it was, yeah. And
he had 1 bad hole.
Tons of talent,
One
too.
bad hole. I forget which one it was. I think it was like 15, was it? Or 6? No, I think it was like...
It was the 16th.
16, yeah.
16th, where he took the double bogey, put himself in bad position, and...
it was like his 18 for Mito. It was like... shot out of the bunker was just awful. His
Hmm.
next putt was awful. It was like he was feeling the pressure on both of those shots. You felt that because it was just the two worst shots you've seen from him all day. And he rebounded. He put himself in a position to birdie 18, but he couldn't get the ball on the green, which is not an easy thing to do on 18 anyway. So
No, and that closing stretch at Southern Hills, the last 5, 6 holes, you only get one real birdie opportunity, and that's the drivable par 4 17th. Even the par 5 yesterday, it played 541 yards. There's only one person out of those last three groups that birdied number 13, the par 5. That was Mito Pereira.
yeah, and he almost eagle too.
Yeah.
Another opportunity that he unfortunately couldn't take advantage of. But a couple of things. Okay, so as far as every major has a different system for the playoffs. Okay.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess I'm okay. All right. What I didn't understand, in a way I did, but I kind of didn't, was if you're going to have a 3-hole playoff in this PGA Championship, and I know it's tough because normal PGA Championships aren't this tough, but that's the rule for the PGA
But they
Championship,
should be.
and maybe they should be. What I didn't like is that, and I know what you were saying about the par 5, but let's just be real. Overall, two of the easiest holes on the course was 13 and 17 because you had a par 5 and the drivable par 4. Why on the toughest? I mean, you have a tough as nails course. You then go into the playoff on 3 holes, and 2 of them are your easiest holes.
A lot of
And I
that
know
is
why.
logistics.
Was that
Logistics.
logistics? That was I was going to say. I understand. But it's just a bad. It's just a bad feeling for me. It's like if you're gonna have be tough for everybody, then make at least 2 of those 3 holes really tough, if not all 3 of them. Instead of it wasn't the makeup of the golf course. You know, that playoff.
That's a fair point. You pick 3 holes. I do love the risk reward of 17. And of course, 18 is just a brute, and it may not be the most thrilling hole. Par is very much your friend at 18, but it is the closing hole, and that's where all the fans are. So 17 and 18 made all the sense in the world. Why 13? I think they did want to get a par 5 in there. They didn't want it to be 4-4-4, which is what it could have been. The last 4 holes at Southern Hills are all par 4s. So without having the course map in front of me, I don't know
Sure.
if the par 3 14th would have worked into that whatsoever. Again, the 17 was kind of playing a lot like a par 3. So in essence, you could argue that this was a par 5, a par 3.5, and a par 4. And so I didn't have any real issue with that, obviously. And for TV, especially after guys have been beating themselves over the head with Southern Hills for 4 hours, give them a chance to be a little aggressive, which is what you want in a thrilling, to make a thrilling conclusion to your tournament, is let guys be aggressive. Don't make them play so safe that it becomes boring golf. So I don't have any issue really with those holes being selected. And again, I don't have the layout in front of me to see how it all kind of fits together, because you know it's going to end at 18, and it probably has 17 leading into 18, and 13 must, with all of those holes that kind of crisscross,
Yeah,
and
13 was right next.
log jam. Yeah. So 13 made sense, and it got something other than a par 4 into the mix.
One mistake that was so glaring that, and I don't want to hear, oh, we did it on purpose because if that's the case, well, I'm sorry, you're just idiots, is not showing the score on television during the playoff.
And I'll admit, I was hunkered over working on my column as the playoff was going on. So I was watching with half an eye, but every time I looked up, it was like, you've just run a leaderboard for 6 hours and you couldn't have the backup leaderboard or something to put the scores in that same corner. Um, you're right. Somebody, unless it was some sort of technical glitch that I have not heard of, but somebody didn't think this through, did they?
No, I mean, the only other thing I was thinking of is, did they think that by doing that, it would cause people to stay on the channel longer because they need to find out what the score was? That's why it's almost like I kind of believe more that it was hey, we thought this over. Yeah, we just didn't have the technical capability of doing it. I just can't believe that. So one of the things is just inexcusable in my mind. So anyway, that's just, I'm sure that they got a backlash on that. They had to have. That's just
Sure. Now they don't have to worry about another major broadcast until next April's Masters, and Augusta National will make sure that they've got that taken care of. But of course, Augusta National is sudden death,
that's
so
true.
that's a little different animal too.
What is the upcoming? U.S. Open. Where is the U.S. Open this year? Even though I think we
It
just
is.
played it, but where's
it, It is at the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is it's a little late. The original intent was to play this one in 2013, but the logistics just didn't work out. But that is where Francis Ouimet pulled off that all-time upset
awesome?
against Harry Vardon and Ted Ray
Yes.
to become the stunner U.S. Open winner in 1913. So it's the same course, obviously lengthened for equipment and all of that, but it is a historical course that, don't forget too, was also site of the 1999 Ryder Cup and Justin Leonard's putt
So
heard
that's it
around the world.
for that golf
Yeah.
course? Just those two major events?
It's a private
Wow,
course,
that's awesome.
and so it is kind of in that every so often occasional major championship selection. It's never going to be Pinehurst. It's never going to be Oakmont. It's never going to be Pebble Beach. It's not made for that. And the membership in Boston, they might love to have it once every 20 years, 25 years, whatever, but they don't want to give up their course all that often. So this is a really special U.S. Open in that sense. And remember too that a lot of those really historic courses, and don't forget we saw it at Marion 8 years ago. They're built into the city. They probably were on the outskirts of the city at the time, but now the city has grown up around them. They don't have a lot of footprint. And so for a tournament like the US Open or the PGA Championship to come there and take up that kind of footprint with grandstands and merchandising and all of the sponsorship stuff that has to go on, it is a huge give up for the membership at a course like that. Congressional went through the same thing. They didn't mind having the 2011 U.S. Open, but they will have one, I think, toward the end of this decade. But it'll be almost 20 years, which maybe once a generation for those type of clubs is perfectly good for them. So you got the Country Club next month for the U.S. Open, and then the 150th Open Championship is at where it should be.
That's awesome.
St. Andrews.
That's great. And when is what is it, a month apart?
Basically, yeah. I mean, the
What is it, June,
U.S. Open
July?
always ends on Father's Day, and the Open Championship is typically the third weekend in July.
Okay.
So
So you're okay. I mean, so you're all right with you just said you think it should be tougher. You actually are okay. You want to see like two almost US Opens, like the PGA Championship have a tough golf course like the US Open?
I don't want to see it where every score is hovering around par. And I think the USGA has been trying to figure out how to make it work without putting a number up there. What I don't want to see necessarily is for a birdie fest.
Sure.
I want the
We all don't want
course.
to see that.
I want the course's character to come out. And so, like at St. Andrews, it's the same footprint that we had in the 1600s. Pretty much. They've moved the tees as far back as they possibly can. You can't go any farther. So it will be a birdie fest at St. Andrews because there's no more room. But the historical factor, all of those hidden bunkers, for those that have never seen St. Andrews except on television, what I always tell people the first time they have a chance to go to St. Andrews is look at the course from the tee and then walk that hole and go behind the green and look back from behind the green toward the tee. And you'll see just how many bunkers are hidden from the tee that you have to know about. It is a fascinating golf course that was made by nature. And obviously for this caliber of professional, with all of the caddies walking the course and having the greens book and all of that, they can tear it apart. But it is just a natural wonder, and the town itself is fantastic. I spent a lot of time trying to plan a trip to St. Andrews this summer. It didn't work out. I'll have to be like everybody else and watch it from home. But it is and Augusta National. Naturally,
Sure.
are my two favorite courses that I've ever been to, and I've been fortunate enough to be to St. Andrews 3 times, and I'd go again and again and again if I could.
What scoring then are you thinking about for St. Andrews this year?
I think we could look at 20 under.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and let's also remember that if that wind comes up, it could be 2 under.
Okay. So it all depends on the weather. Okay.
All of those links courses, if you get the wrong weather, or I've seen it in sunshine, I've seen it in heavy winds, I've seen it in fog, or not seen it in fog, as the case may be. And so all of those British Open courses, they can yield 20 under, but they can also, when the wind is whipping and it's coming off in the wrong direction, all of a sudden you're struggling to make par and just try to get out with as many pars as you can. But if the weather is good, we could see 20 under. There's no question about that. The 2 times that Tiger Woods won and the weather was rather benign, he was flirting with 20 under the whole time.
All right. Well, I don't think we're going to see Tiger this year. What do you think?
I think he might skip Brookline, but he's already put it out there. He wants to go to St. Andrews. He wants to go to the 150th Open. He wants to go to a place where he's won twice before, and it is the shortest walk of all 4 majors. And so there's a nostalgic factor, there's a personal factor, and I think that if he were to take off the US Open and just kind of focus on, I want to see what I can do at St. Andrews, and it's all gravy for Tiger now. If he can contend, that'd be great. But I think some of this too is, where can I have my best chance to do it? He did play the country club at the 99 Ryder Cup, so he has a certain knowledge of that. Whether that makes a difference or not, I don't know. But he, like I say, immediately after Augusta, he told the BBC he was going to be at St. Andrews, and so that's the focus. And if he has to skip the US Open to do it, he'll send his apologies to the USGA and focus on getting to St. Andrews. And honestly, anytime you can go to St. Andrews, you go to St. Andrews.
But no update on his health at this point. Too early?
No, too early, and they're going to keep that incredibly close to the vest. The next time you'll get really any sort of indication with Tiger's health is when he shows up at a venue, just like he did at Southern Hills. And he said that after Augusta, he only took 1 day off for rest and then tried to put everything together in time for Southern Hills. It's a really noble effort and good on him for it. And the fact that he was able to grind out and make the cut after a poor opening round, says a lot. But if he wants to be in his best health for St. Andrews, he'll have to obviously work hard, try to continue to build that strength, and he's going to have to get rest. And maybe that's the thing that is hardest to tell Tiger to do. Slow down, get your rest, take it easy. Sometimes the only thing that'll let him that will send him an effective message to get rest is when his body says, no more. We need a day. We need a couple days.
Yeah.
And hopefully, this being Monday evening, hopefully he's resting today.
That would be nice.
And healing up.
And speaking of injuries, Bubba Watson, who was in contention in round 3 on Saturday until slipping late, he apparently came down with an injury.
Apparently he played with this torn meniscus in his knee, which makes those first 2 rounds even the more remarkable because we hadn't seen him on the radar. This was no indication that he was going to play well at Southern Hills, but sometimes you catch fire. But it was interesting just kind of watching Bubba on the television when things started to go south, and maybe this is a credit to Bubba because we know Bubba can have the blood pressure rise a little bit. Poor Ted Scott, right? Although Ted Scott's doing pretty good now with Scotty Scheffler's bag.
That's true.
But Bubba just was not animated when he got into trouble. And so whether that means that he was he knew kind of where he was health-wise, and I think that may be a very big indicator. He knew where he was health-wise, and then he was able to just try to grind it out the best he could. But now the word is he needs 4 to 6 weeks. Well, 4 weeks would put him in jeopardy of the U.S. Open, and I did not have time before the show to kind of check and see if he's in that U.S. Open field. His exemptions for winning the Masters expired a couple years ago, so he would need a world ranking or a FedEx Cup ranking or something of that nature. And so maybe he's another one of these guys that just has to write off the U.S. Open and again just get healthy. 6 weeks is definitely beyond the U.S. Open territory, but it could put the British Open in play.
All right, let's talk about on the last part of our show, this week's event, the Charles Schwab Challenge, which is really all you need to know is that it's a Colonial Country Club. That's the real marquee there. Some really interesting trends I found out this week, and I put my picks up on the screen as we're talking. And some of the trends that really caught my eye were the most interesting is that if you look at it, first of all, the last player to win back-to-back, and this is going to be tough for Jason Kokrak, the defending champ, the last player to win back-to-back at Colonial Country Club was Ben Hogan in 1953. So that's real interesting. That's a golf course with a long history, and players do return and champions do return. Matter of fact, I believe the last 7 winners are in the field, and they're ranging from 12 to 1 to 80 to 1. So you don't usually get that. Players sometimes don't make these return trips, even though they're past champions. So the last 7 champions of the event are returning, but we have yet to see a consecutive win at Colonial Country Club in back-to-back years since Ben Hogan in 1953. So I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say?
No, I was just agreeing with you. Although I will say that Colonial is one of those golf courses that it is a shorter course. And remember, when you go back to when Annika Sorenstam teed it up at Colonial, it was picked because it could be in her in her wheelhouse. So a lot of the long hitters don't necessarily like Colonial. It's got a lot of dog legs. It's very positional golf. If you're looking to grip it and rip it, it's not easy to necessarily hit them over all of those oak trees over at Colonial. So the players that play Colonial like that style of golf. And those that don't, particularly the week after a U.S. Open, or I'm sorry, but a week after a PGA Championship, they would not really have any incentive to go sign up. So I think that's why so many former winners do come back, is not only do they enjoy coming back to a place that they've won before, but just Colonial Country Club being that old Perry Maxwell course and a great design is something that you don't see enough of, in my opinion, on the PGA Tour.
Well, here's an interesting trend as well. The past 3 winners have averaged 64th in the world rankings. And you would think, oh, does that mean that this is one of those events where you get all sorts of long shots? Well, no. And I bring this up because it shouldn't be a coincidence that during that 3-year stretch, the event, now the Charles Schwab, has been held after the PGA Championship. So, and keeping in mind that in 2020, it was the first event following the 3-month layoff, though. So you had that, which was definitely going to have, you're not going to have your top players in peak form. You got the other 2 years where the peak form top players are coming off the PGA Championship. So you can see why now, if this event continues to follow the PGA Championship, I think this becomes more of an event that you might see, those players that rank maybe between 35 and 65, those good player, but not exactly, because there were some really good players in the field this week, including Thomas and Scheffler and Spieth and Morikawa. Those are obviously the top guys. But I just, and that's kind of the way that I went with my picks. I did go with one player at the top in Morikawa, but all the rest of my picks kind of guys that a little bit off the ranking radar. And I can see that, especially after what these players had to deal with at Southern Hills last week.
Yeah, and it does. I find it interesting, putting on my schedule czar hat a little bit, that the Byron Nelson and the Colonial was always the Texas two-step. It was always back-to-back until this recent stretch. And sometimes it works. I think this year it works because essentially you're going from Dallas to Tulsa to Fort Worth. Yeah. It's an easy trip. Is it going to be that way next year? Because if it is, you're going to go from Dallas to Rochester and then right back where you started from, essentially. So I don't know. Again, I'm not the scheduling czar. I don't know if the Nelson and Colonial wanted a little bit of separation. One always seemed to be in the shadow of the other, and that kind of went back and forth a little bit, depending on scheduling, what kind of course the hot players were at. When Byron Nelson was living, then a lot of players went to the Byron Nelson, even though they didn't like the course, yeah. But they wanted to pay homage to Byron. Sure. Ben Hogan's been gone for a while, and he's the name associated with Colonial. But as you have pointed out, there are a lot of players that just love that style of golf course and will continue to play it at Colonial, while the Nelson is going through this churn of different courses. TPC Craig Ranch, it's a good course. I don't know if it's ever going to be a classic course like Colonial sure. is. So it's interesting just how they juxtapose it against each other. But I think when you are a top 20, top 30 player, you always have the option of not playing the week after a major. And a lot of them choose to do that, especially if it's been a rough week where the course is beating you up a little bit. You just kind of need to recharge your batteries. And don't forget that right after Colonial, if I'm not mistaken on the calendar, not having it in front of me, but right after Colonial, we have the Memorial. Yep. And you do want to go pay homage to Jack Nicklaus and play a fantastic golf course at Muirfield Village. So all of those go into the scheduling decisions that every pro has to make.
They have to go what, to every event on tour once every 3 years? Is that what that is?
The proposal was once every 4 years, but there are certain ways of getting out of that.
Okay. Well, maybe that's why.
So you got to read the fine print.
Maybe that's why some of the players that are here this week decided, yeah, maybe this is a good year to go because it's so close to the PGA Championship.
Absolutely, it's a far easier trip. Yeah. If this sequence stays in place next year, then I would have a difficult time thinking that any top 30 player is going to go from Oak Hill to Colonial unless you really like Colonial or you're a native Texan.
Like Jordan Spieth.
Jordan Spieth will still go.
Scotty
Scheffler will still go. Will Zalatoris will still go. And you know what? That helps that tournament hugely because there was a period of time where Texans were not at the top of the rankings. And it wasn't until we got Jordan Spieth kind of in that mix that Texas became important again. And, you know, we know that Texas has a long history on the PGA Tour. Hogan, Nelson, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Kite, Jimmy DeMeritt, all through, but you know, sometimes you hit flat spots. And that's kind of what it was in both Colonial and Nelson. Hurt a little bit because of that. But now, when you know that Scotty Scheffler's coming and Jordan Spieth's coming and Zalatoris is coming, that's going to help all of those. But is Dustin Johnson going to go from Rochester to Colonial? Sure. Is John Rahm going to do that? Yeah, they'll probably just go straight to Columbus.
As far as the rest of my picks, I mentioned I got Morikawa. He's the only favorite. So again, I'm going to go with that. Away from the favorites this week. And then everyone else I took, all my other 6 picks, all between 40 and 65 to 1. So there's a lot of those players this week. So it's a very competitive field. But some of my picks include Tommy Fleetwood. Like the way he closed out yesterday. He's kind of, maybe he is now getting back into the field because he hasn't won in a couple of years. He's never won on the PGA Tour. But he does have 8 top 25s on the season in 11 events. And again, maybe Sunday is a good way for him to kind of keep going. Pereira, as I mentioned, I'm going to go back to him. Gary Woodland, he is not playing well. We know that as compared to the way he used to play, especially after he won a U.S. Open. But he's had his moments. He was decent last week. He's played well here the last 2 years. And he kind of fits that, you know, believe it or not, he's 102nd in the world. I mean, that's just not Gary Woodland. And then I also rounded out my top 5 with Brian Harman. Harman has 8 straight top 35s at this event with 3 top 10s. And he also has 5 top 35s in his last 6 on the season, including a 9th and a 5th place finish. So, and he was 8th last year. So those are my top 5: Morikawa, Fleetwood, Pereira, Woodland, and Harman. Who do you like out of that group?
I like the idea of Morikawa. When I look at this event, it is not a Bombers event. The one, if I could flip it for just a second, the one I might throw out is Gary Woodland because of his distance. He's going to have to rein himself in at this event, but he has played well at shorter, tighter golf courses.
He has,
I like Brian Harman. I don't know that I like him better than Colin Morikawa, but I like the idea of Brian Harman because not only has he shown he's played well, and the reason he's played well at this golf course is it fits his profile. He is one of the shortest hitters on the PGA Tour, but his putter, when it's on, can throw him up onto that first page of the leaderboard, and then it's just a matter of can he take it through Sunday afternoon.
Matter of fact, let's remember Gary Woodland, like his best event this year was at Bay Hill. So, like you said, tougher golf course like that. And he actually, as I said, 14th last year here and 9th a couple of years ago. And then my alternates, I'm going with Davis Riley and Troy Merritt. Boy, this Davis Riley kid has come from nowhere. Had
another rookie.
Had the runner-up at the Valspar to Sam Burns. And since then, 4 top 15s in his last 6. And he was 13th last week at the PGA Championship. And Troy Merritt, meanwhile, 7th here last year, is also in my my alternate. And the other players that just missed out were Taylor Gooch, Lucas Herbert, and Christian Kirk as in that group. And then my long shots that I'll probably just throw a buck on this week: Patton Kizzire, Stephen Yeager, and I have to put a buck on Matthias Schwab. Have to do it. So anyway, out of those players I just mentioned, who's interesting to you?
I've been very bullish on Taylor Gooch. I think that he is in his second or third year now on the tour. Was a very talented collegian. That's also kind of his territory. Went to Oklahoma State. And plays well in bigger events, and he's still looking for a PGA Tour win. But I think this is a place where he would feel really, really comfortable. Oh, he did. That's right. Yes.
Which event was that? I think it was. I forget where it was, but yeah, he won last year. It was late last year, I believe, in one of those football season events, the RSM Classic. Which actually is the last event of the year for Taylor Gooch back in November.
Last event of the season, that part of the season for everybody.
Yes. So, also, by the way, playing this week, like I mentioned, the top players, I would say Home is playing, Horschel's playing, and a few others. I'll tell you what, I don't know if this is going to work, but this is the end of the show anyway. But I'm going to try to see if I can hook Jan Stephenson up. See if we can do this. If not, then we'll figure it out another. There she is. Hi, Jan.
Hi. Sorry, it took longer to play than I thought.
That's okay. Hold on one second. I'm going to try to see if I can hook you up in here. I've got a. Let's see. There you are.
See Jeff.
How you doing, Jan?
Hi. Good. How are you?
They keep me busy around here.
I know.
Okay, there you go. All right, so I'm going to get rid of that. There you are. Excellent. So I just got to get rid of this logo there. So I'm not going to be able to make it pretty, but we got you on the air nonetheless. And I wanted to get you on definitely anyway, because again, I know you're running late and we were just about to shut the show down, but Jeff had a question he wanted to ask you. So Jeff, now you can ask your question.
We were talking about Mito Pereira coming down the stretch on the back nine, and particularly at 18. And the one thing that you cannot duplicate, you can't practice it on the range, you can't duplicate it in a regular tour event, is how you're going to feel on the back nine of a major. And I was going to ask you to dig into your memory bank. How, in the very first major that you were in contention, what were you feeling? How did you deal with it? And were you able to take it to the finish?
Well, my first major, I won wire to wire. So obviously I had the pressure from the very beginning. But, it's just like he didn't play. He made some great 15-footers to even hang in there on the front nine that most people weren't making on that golf course. And the golf course I didn't even recognize it, because I played a lot of golf because I won my Open in Tulsa at another course at Cedar Ridge. But so we used to go over there and play there a lot. And I questioned some of the design changes because, and it, kind of going off subject, but there was a little bit of luck involved. You could be hitting it on the green and it would suck back off into the hazard. And I think that's unfair, and that's a lot of luck. But saying that, there's, like you said, there is no way to assimilate being that nervous, because everything goes in slow motion. People keep saying, oh, weren't you in the zone? It's like, I wish I could get into the zone they talk about, because you think it's never going to be over. Everything is in slow motion. It just takes forever because you want it to be over. And the decision he made on 18 to hit a driver and not hit a 3-wood down the left side, when especially the way that ball could bounce anytime into that hazard on the right, the hole was too hard and too long. It's better as a par 5, and it's better that they made the golf course, I think, too tough. I think Gil Hanse I thought he overdid it, and because of that, we didn't have a lot of the top names up there. But as Mito getting down there, there's no way. You can try all you can. I mean, I try to think of ways to get nervous, but there is nothing. I swear I can hear my heart pumping. You can hear it. It's just so loud because everything is so exaggerated, and you make very poor decisions. I made some bad decisions and got away with it. Not at that one, but I think of some of the tournaments I won where I should have laid up, and you see the players say, why didn't you just lay up short of the water? Well, I remember when I won Tucson, and I'm like, no, I'm going to go over the water. But I think about, that was dumb. It was a par 5. I should have laid up and then hit it on the green and made a 5. But as it turned out, I went over and I made 4, so everything worked out. But you don't think straight, and and they go, why doesn't the caddy tell you? It's just like with Phil when he blew the US Open at Winged Foot. How do you pull somebody off in that situation, knowing that if you're wrong, and like Phil had said, when we all thought he should have hit a 3-wood or 5-wood on 18, and he goes, but I hit that just as crooked. Would Mito have hit that as crooked? Maybe not, but he could have hit out to the left and had more loom. So that was more of a mental error, but those mental errors are made because you're so nervous.
It was pointed out that driver was the club that Mito used when he birdied 18, and it was like one of 3 birdies the entire day on Saturday at 18. So if he's comfortable with that, and this is a valid discussion too, you as the golfer want to hit whatever it is you're comfortable with, and even if driver is, in our mind, not the safe play, if it's the comfortable play, is that a calculated risk that you take?
Well, that's an excellent point, because I would rather hit a drive. I think I hit my driver better than my 3-wood. So you're right. And he hit a great drive on 18. And that's what I'm saying is I almost think that's a design flaw to be that close. There's a ridge right there. And he didn't even think he hit it in the water. He thought he hit it down the right side and it would kick down. He was actually surprised when they said it went in the water. So you're right. I mean, if you talk to him and he would have your argument, if I feel comfortable with the driver, why you tell me to lay out to? And that's the thing. What if a caddy said that? Let's hit a 3-wood over to the left side and you won't go through the fairway. I'd be mad at my caddy if he pulled me off of my driver. So Sure. You're right. I mean, and especially like you said, he made 3 there the day before. So you're right. I mean, as much as I criticize, what you're saying is true. If you're a player and you've made 3 and hit the perfect drive, why in the world would you not want to change that? Different if you hit in the water every day, you're like, let's try something different. But he just made 3. So you're right.
But the biggest difference, what you were saying though, Jan, is that the golf course was really tough. And it was almost like a US Open setup.
It was. You know how we talk about the Open, USGA was their goals to have even par. But I thought there's a difference in setting the course up tough, and there's a difference in how the design was set up. The design of the golf course was too close to I hate to be a member there now on some of those holes because it's so unfair. I mean, not just the length. They were adding 100 yards to a par 5. I mean, 656. So it eliminates half the field. But then I didn't like the luck factor. I didn't like the fact that just on the same as 18, there's only about a 10-foot difference there with it hitting the ridge and going straight, or hitting the ridge and kicking to the right. I think on that long a hole, that's totally unfair. Now
it was a big point pre-PGA that Gil Hanse went back with Southern Hills archivists, and they found all of all of Perry Maxwell's drawings. And when you do a restoration, if you can put your course design hat on, how true do you want to be to the original restoration? And when you say that it's too tough, but is that how Perry Maxwell designed it in 1936?
Well, that's another good point. I mean, it was a very, very difficult golf course in 1936, but I didn't think it had the ridges that were unfair. You know, moving those greens over near that creek and keeping the ridges where they were, I think that was right. And one thing that Gil did that is questionable, he always says he likes to design his bunkers like the Australian style, like the sandbell, like the way that Alistair Mackenzie did it. And I love Alistair Mackenzie bunkers. But when he said he designs the bunkers Australian style, then you've got to use the same sand as that. The players were all saying how hard it was to spin the ball because Gil Hanse had said that he had used the same sand that Perry Maxwell used from Ohio, the actual same place where he bought the sand, which is a very heavy sand. You can't spin the ball out of that sand. So you don't make the bunkers the modern style or the style of the fine sand, because look what happened to Tiger on Friday, I think, or Saturday, when he buried it in the, maybe that was Friday, when he buried it in the lip. Australian Alistair Mackenzie bunkers, they make it where the bunkers are very firm and then they flash them on the like that, but the sand is so firm the ball can't bury, it runs down to the flat. So he made the bunkers that way, and then he put the wrong sand in. So if you're going to go Maxwell, you've got to go all the way.
And
you
that's
can't
exactly
do
what I
another
was gonna
different design bunker.
You've got to if you're going to restore to Perry Maxwell, restore to Perry Maxwell even with the bunkers in design, and don't mix and match, I suppose.
Exactly. So he did all this research, and then he said, "Oh, I did Australian style bunkers." Well, that didn't work.
No, that would not be Midwest. Certainly not.
Right.
Well, by the way, you were watching the playoff, Jan?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you think about the scoring on the television screen? That didn't tell you anything
you mean
that was
where they
going
did
on.
the aggregate score? Well, I like that better than one hole, because like one hole.
No, what I was saying. Well, actually, we could talk about that too. Yes, because those are two things I did want to. I opened up with Jeff was the decision to have 3 holes on the playoff. What I was concerned about was, and I know why they did it, because it was everything was close together. But I just thought for such a tough golf course to have 2 of the 3 playoff holes, the easiest holes on the course, just seemed a little weird to me. It's like if you're going to go all tough, just go all tough. That was just my issue.
That's a good point. What did you think, Jeff?
Well, I think, as I told Greg, I think logistics becomes a part of it, because you have all the fans at 18. You've got to keep them at 18, or a lot of them at 18 in the hospitality, watching the TV, whatever. So 18 is going to be part of it. 17 is going to lead into 18. And I love the fact that they had the drivable par 4 as part of the playoff hole. So now how do you get to 17? Well, 13 was an easy lead in. And not only does it work logistically, but it prevents the playoff from being 3 par 4s. It was a par 5, a par 3.5, and a brutal par 4.
Yeah, I agree. I can see all the reasons why. I like Greg's point that if it's going to be that tough a golf course, you should have had tough holes. But 18 is a tough hole. But the thing is, they did pretty much hand it to Justin Thomas when they did that. Was give him holes like that. Because Justin has a tendency. He has less control of his driver than maybe you should for his good as he is. But he drove it perfect in the playoff. I mean, those were 3 brilliant drives. And when you had to, it would have. I mean, obviously, I like Justin Thomas, and he got the worst of the tee time, so he probably deserved to win, because Friday was a brilliant round in that weather. But I obviously wanted Zalatoris. I mean, he deserves to win too.
And you make a good point. Justin Thomas, year after year, is one of the top birdie makers on the PGA Tour. So if you put in 3-hole playoff and 2 of them are birdieable holes, slight advantage, Justin Thomas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the other thing I was bringing up is that we had talked about this with the LPGA, where remember I mentioned that I was watching the LPGA major, I think it was, because I'm not sure why else I would be watching the LPGA, and I noticed that every time I turned the event on, they didn't have the scoring. So remember we talked about that, where every time you watch golf now on a PGA Tour, no matter what channel it is, you turn it on and got the score, continuous scoring.
Right.
So for whatever reason, they didn't do that with the LPGA, and I forget why. There was a reason. I think you mentioned there was a reason they did it. Okay, whatever. So what was confusing to Jeff and I was that for the playoff holes, all they showed was, playoff, Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris. They didn't show the scoring. So for 3 holes, if you weren't listening and watching and paying attention to everything that was going on, you had no idea what was going on. You didn't know what the score was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's...
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I was writing my column at the time. My column was on Mito, so I was trying to get ahead of the game. But yeah, every time I glanced up, it was like, who's leading?
Yeah.
And
Finally,
wow. I just went to the website and figured it out that way.
It's just quicker.
Interesting. No, I didn't even notice that because I was watching closely.
Yeah, that's what it was for.
We're spoiled these days because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the sport is. The score is always on the screen pretty much, in one corner or another. And so we only notice when it's no longer on the screen.
That's a good point.
I know. It's like when you watch the classic events and you just see the way that it's like, wow, there's nothing on this screen. There's no news. There's no scores. There's nothing. And
Wow.
it just brings you back to how it used to
You're
be.
right, Jeff. You get spoiled.
Yes. Couple more things before I let you go, Jan, and we'll close the show. And we were talking about the upcoming majors. So we've got the U.S. Open, which is going to be held at, what was the name of that movie, Jeff? Greatest Game Ever Played?
Greatest game ever played.
Oh, it's in Boston this year?
It's at Brookline at the Country Club.
Yes.
Brookline's tough.
So that's going to be kind of cool. And then, of course, St. Andrews for the Open Championship. And you can't beat St. Andrews. And Jeff was implicating that if the weather isn't tough, that we could see scoring, maybe even in the 20s, as far as, not high 20s, but you could see, 20 under par winning the Open Championship this year.
Well, like Jeff said, I mean, they're hitting it so far. And if you avoid the little putt bunkers, you can hit it pretty crooked there. There's basically no out of bounds except for 17. You only go across there and maybe number 1, but you can bail out so far left. So you could see some low scores, but again, they need the weather to definitely do something there.
So, but that's what's coming up. You have you've been to Colonial, Jan. What do you think about Colonial? As we were talking with this Charles Schwab this week, it's like one of the last remaining, every year come back to like old style golf courses.
Yeah, I'm a member at Colonial still. I used to live in Fort Worth. The thing with Colonial, and this is my old caddy that used to caddy for me, caddies for Kevin Na, who's they consider a still pretty long, but a shorter hitter on tour compared to the Bombers. And this is one of the courses where they believe he's won there a couple of years ago. Is a course that's one of the few not Bomber courses where it's about ball striking. You really have to work your ball both ways. You can get penalized it's really short coming down the stretch for them, a lot of short irons. And so it's all about the ball strikers for this one.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes because, again, as I was mentioning, it's after the PGA Championship. And the last 2 because this is going to be the fourth year that it's been after the PGA Championship, and 1 year was wiped out because of COVID, but the other two, the ranking of the players were pretty high. I believe they were as high as 106, and that was Daniel Berger. He was 106th in the world at the time that he won in 2020. And Jason, actually, that was 2020. That was the off year. But Kokrak was 35th last year, and Kevin Na was 52nd, your boy, back in 2019. And I think that's not a surprise, because when you're coming off the PGA Championship, I just don't think some of these top players are going to be focused, especially Justin Thomas and Will Zalatoris, that are both scheduled to play this week.
I mean, Will will play because he lives in Dallas. I don't know that Justin will play.
Yeah, I agree. I think you'll probably.
I mean, usually after you win, there's a big letdown, even if you're in contention. But I think Will will still play because, like I said, he's local, and Mito will probably play. But I don't know. He may be enough. You know, there's such a letdown. Whether when you're like there, that it's hard to get back up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how long that takes. And don't forget, Jan, Mito was the player that I picked to break his PGA Tour maiden this year.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
In our
good choice.
Yeah, well, he hasn't won yet, but he almost did.
But still, he almost
still
did.
2 months before the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's you can pick it up at the Rocket Mortgage Classic or the 3M Open,
it doesn't matter how
even the Canadian Open.
Yeah. Canadian Open should be good this year. Finally, this is the best group of Canadians that we've seen in a long time, right, Jeff?
Well, just the fact that they're playing the Canadian Open after 2 years of not playing it.
Where are they playing?
I do not have that at the top. Off the top
is it St. George's this year? Might be Toronto.
It might be.
Yeah, but they roam.
Let's see. Go ahead. I'll find it. Were you going to say something before I interrupted you? Let's see. Here it is. It's St. George's, Toronto.
There we go.
That's what you said, Jan?
Yeah, we used to play there. Yeah, it's a great golf course.
So Rory
in Toronto.
Rory was the last player to win there.
Oh wow, it's a good course for Rory.
And Patrick Cantlay will be the defending champ next week when we preview Memorial. So, and before I let you go, the very last question, and because I like to throw out these trends and trivia at you, Jan. Jason Kokrak is the defending champ this week. Do you know the last player to win back-to-back at Colonial Country Club, or at least give me the year?
It's easier to name the player than the year.
It is. Especially if you think of this event.
Hogan. Did Ben Hogan win it twice?
Yes.
1953. The last time a player has won a Colonial in back-to-back years. How crazy is that?
Wow. Who was it?
That was Ben Hogan.
It was Ben.
It was Ben?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. How many?
1953. Wow.
What is that? 60, 70, 69 years, Jeff?
Well, he was a member there, and he loved the golf course.
That's right.
Yeah. The intriguing thing is that was after the accident, but it was absolutely his. Shady Oaks was his home course, but it was his second home course.
Yeah. All right. Well, odds on Kokrak becoming the next one is going to be pretty high, but we'll see what happens. We'll talk Memorial next week. Jared will be back next week. So, Jeff, thanks for pinch hitting. It's good to have you on every few months or so. So maybe the next time we talk to you again, hopefully we'll get lucky to talk to you at some point between the U.S. and Open Championships. I know your schedule's real tough, but we kind of accidentally backed into this one, and hopefully we'll accidentally back into another one again in the next month or two.
You never know what you can back into.
There you go. It was good to see you, Jeff.
Good to see you, Jan.
All right. We'll see everybody next week.
Okay, bye.
Take care.